Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week. It is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, your weekly political news activist talk show talking about things here, near, local, national, and basically talking about those things mainstream media won't and calling out the establishment on its BS. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM WIDR Kalamazoo or Western Michigan University. So we are joined today by another congressional candidate. This is a third installment of our 6th District Congressional Candidate Series. This is George Franklin. If you want to briefly introduce yourself to the folks at home, George.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And it's great to be here. Yeah, I've lived in Kalamazoo for 30-some years. I worked at Kellogg for quite a while. I've had my own small business for 12 years. Of particular importance to this show in this location, I was on the Western Board for 11 years with Peter Henneke and Elson Floyd. And quite proud of my activities and my role there at Western. And decided I wanted to make a difference. After this last election, I woke up and I said, my God, what has just happened here? And I want to make a difference, and I want to make sure everybody gets a fair shot. That's what I see this campaign to be about, making sure people get a fair shot.
Well, thank you, George. And I appreciate you coming on the show. I know... we've got a reputation. We're kind of like a radical leftist broadcast, so it's, hopefully it's not too much of a lion's den type of feeling.
Well let me just interject. Let me just interject and say I was a progressive before they called it progressive. There was something called the Vietnam War, right? And I had friends coming home in body bags. And I said, once again, I'm going to do something about this. So I got involved in the McGovern campaign. Actually remind me, this is a little quirk of history, but remember Gene McCarthy? We used to go, was called Get Clean for Gene, and we'd go to New Hampshire, but I worked in the McGovern campaign. And then at 72, I went out to Arizona to work for the first significant Mexican-American candidate running for Congress. His name was Roberto Reveles. He came out of the farm workers movement.
Oh, right.
And I worked out there in that campaign, and I'd like to say we got beat, but we won. We lost his election, but then it was, I believe, 4 years later, the first Hispanic governor of Arizona was elected. So I've been involved in progressive causes since I was in college. So this is not the lion's den. It's a very comfy little room. And be glad to talk to you about any issue on anything you want.
All right.
And I noticed you cuss a little bit, and I like to cuss a little bit too. I might do that too.
Let's keep it at least FCC clean.
You got it.
Hit the dump button there. But one thing, so should we, I would say like maybe should we hit that elephant in the room? As I know you get asked about this a lot, and it's, there's articles about this, so like it's kind of a matter of public record. But for listeners of mine at home who, are maybe like kind of say what when it comes to this particular instance. So I'm referring to, so you have donated to Fred Upton in the past, including in the previous election cycle.
Correct.
Now, I would like you to kind of explain to listeners at home who may be taken aback by that a bit, why the donations to Fred Upton, and how is that? I think a lot of people would consider that potentially a conflict of interest for someone running for Congress. How do you feel that it is not?
Well, first of all, yes, I did. I made contributions to Fred Upton, and I did it to advance the cause of the clients I represented, all of whom I'm very proud of what they represented. For instance, University of Michigan Cancer Center, Food Protection Training Institute, lobbied to expand Medicaid coverage for the rehab hospital, and it's a part of the job. It's a part of the process. Is it the one I like the most? Not at all. Western Michigan University has lobbyists that give to many Republicans. The Y has lobbyists that gave thousands of dollars to Republicans. It's part of the process. The process ought to be scrapped. I have said that from the beginning, okay? It's part of the process. The process needs to be scrapped and redone. And it goes back, it's a dated law. It was 1974. The Federal Election Campaign Act was passed. And through a series of court cases and other non-action by the Federal Election Commission, it's morphed into the monstrosity it is now. So was I an advocate for those causes? Yes, I was. Am I proud of them? Yes, I am. Was I successful? Quite often. And I'm very proud of getting millions and millions of dollars of cancer research money. But it's a process I know. It's a process that exists. People can deny it if they want to, but that's the reality.
Okay, so you said this process should be scrapped. So there's a organization known as Wolfpack. It's called wolf-pack.com. They are a bipartisan organization that's designed to get money out of politics, and they are fighting to get a 28th Amendment through the states to call for a constitutional convention so we could have a clean system. If you're going to represent, and the reason why they're doing it is because 97% of Americans believe that money corrupts politics. Lobbyists, dark money, all those things affect the people that's supposed to be representing the American people. If you're going to be a representative for the six, would you sign on to, or would you fight for a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics?
If there was a constitutional way to get money out of politics, yeah, I'd support that. Do I think that constitutional amendment is going to happen? No. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think the states are going to confirm it. I don't think the Congress is going to pass it. Okay? What I do think we need to do is appoint judges that read the Constitution correctly. Okay? And I happen to be the only lawyer on either side. Fred Upton, any of the Republicans, likely, whatever. And I'm a pretty good lawyer. And Citizens United was a travesty. Thomas Jefferson and them did not think of corporations as citizens with political free speech. Now, there's commercial free speech and there's political free speech. There's a huge distinction there. And Citizens United was a travesty. The example I like to use about the Supreme Court reading the Constitution correctly is Plessy v. Ferguson, that ruled that separate, segregated schools were equal, and then Brown versus the Board of Education. Not a word of the United States Constitution changed between those two decisions. What you had are judges that read the Constitution correctly.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. Already 5 states have already called for this constitutional convention, and they're not having Congress pass it. You are correct on that by saying Congress is not going to pass it. That's like asking cancer to cure itself.
So you're saying
what they're doing is they're doing an Article 5 convention, right, which is going past the Congress, and they're calling for the states to call for a convention. California, Vermont, I forgot the other ones off the top of my head, but I'm happy to hear that you're for getting money out of politics. The thing is that the whole system of what you were talking about with Citizens United, that was shooting a dead horse. If we're gonna talk about why money in politics is a true problem, you gotta go back to Buckley v. Vallejo, and right, that decision, right, and that's the turning point of corporations being people and having inalienable rights.
Well, under the Federal Election Campaign Act of '74, I actually worked on Capitol Hill when that was passed. And what it did was it created PACs. And the idea behind it, in theory, was actually somewhat attractive. And that was collectively you could join together, collectively influence the political process, and work together as a group. No one in their wildest imaginations envisioned what then took place. Because then you took off into this sort of arms race, if you would, of money, where the PACs started competing with other PACs. You know, there's this misconception. Business lobbyists, most of their lobbying is done against other businesses. It's not against consumer groups. It's not against organized labor. It's cutting up the economic pie. Okay? And the reason they spend a lot of money at it is because a provision here, a provision there, a clause there, a comma there is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This last tax bill, total travesty, is a classic example, okay? You can make more money with a comma than you can making a new product, okay? So, but it goes back to this arms race that was created. Once again, in fairness to the people that passed it, they didn't anticipate what was then going to take place. You're right on Buckley Vallejo. That was the critical component of it.
That was the turning of the.
But you and I agree, because what I said at the beginning, it was the 74 Act with a series of court cases.
Yeah.
That then morphed it into what is. The other thing we ought to just get rid of is the Federal Election Commission. Totally useless. Totally useless. It's, equal 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. It does nothing. There's really no enforcement authority. You need to keep the transparency it provides, and that you need to report who contributed to who, where the money came from. But as an enforcement agency, it's a total waste.
Can I quickly ask a question? And if you have another campaign finance question, we can do that. I think maybe move on to another topic after that. But just real quick, so I think the biggest thing that people are concerned about is the financial influence on candidates. Would you support publicly funded elections, and what would that look like? There's proposals on the right to do kind of like a voucher system. Some Democrats have proposed doing matching funds. Is that something that you would support, and do you think that would help work towards solving the problem?
Also to add to that, another thing that a lot of states are also coming up with, like in New York, is ranked choice voting, which is another way of fixing said problem.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And the other one, if I could just digress for a second, I'll answer your question, but is also the California system now, where the 2 top in the primary, regardless of party, go on the ballot. And it was an idea that the thought was to take the extremes out of either party and force the debate, the discussion, if you would, more towards the middle, which some people might find offensive, but that's what California has done. So there's pros and cons on both. My problem with public financing of elections is you have the government determining who's the candidate. And where do you start? Where do you draw? What's the criteria?
Not necessarily. That's
wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Now, if you go back to the 1976 election with Jimmy Carter, I believe it was Mo Udall, who did not get his financing in the state of Michigan, and will tell you, or wrote, no one with us, but it was because of his not getting the financing, he was unable, from the government, his matching funds, that he was unable to compete and eventually lost the election. Whether that's true or not, you could argue till the cows come home, okay? The problem is, you start off here in the 6th Congressional District, you have to go off and get 1,000 signatures to get on the ballot, okay? I actually think that's a pretty good system, okay? The problem is, when you take it to the next level, it's the catch-22. If you're not recognized as a candidate, you can't get the exposure to compete to become a candidate. And if you're not considered a candidate, then you don't get the federal funds or the state funds or whatever you're looking at. And I don't want Donald Trump controlling the checkbook of who's a candidate, okay?
Hold on.
I believe the idea of publicly financed campaigns is not dissemination of campaign funds by government entities, but literal public financing, grassroots organizing, small dollar donation financing of campaigns, moving towards a decentralized individual basis.
Yeah, so the idea, a voucher system would be a person has like $100 voucher, or just for example, and they donate that to a candidate X. Or if it were a matching fund system, somebody donates $20-$50. That means from the public financing pool there is another $50 donated. It's basically so an individual low dollar donor actually has more kind of buying power towards like the money that they can give to their preferred candidate. So it's not about like the a government sector being able to kind of pick and choose and ferret the money out it sees fit. It is literally tied to how people are voting with their dollar.
Well, I mean, what I would strongly support is a limit on the amount of money anybody can give per candidate. You can have the magic figure. It can be $100, it can be $50. We can argue about that once again. But I think that is totally constitutional. I think every dollar needs to be reported, whoever gave to you whatever amount, and it needs to be reported in a timely fashion. But I think you can constitutionally cap it. Once again, it goes back to what's constitutional is decided by 9 people wearing robes in that Supreme Court building. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you have cases like Citizens United, you can pass all the laws you want. All right, I guess you would say, right? You can pass the Constitution. Let me just mention on the Constitutional Amendment, though. You know what that reminds me of? The Republicans voting against Obamacare. Okay? And we all laughed at it. I made fun of them. They voted, 52 times or something.
Even though it was their own plan. Really.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Going back to going back to the Heritage Foundation. But that's a whole nother story. Right. But I mean, what we need to do is get realistic about. The first thing we need to do is flip 24 seats. When Senator Levin came in to help me, he's endorsed me, and there is no stronger advocate of campaign reform than you can find that Senator Levin was in there. But he said, look, what we need is a check somewhere in this system now. We need a check and somewhere to put some balance. Hopefully, the Senate will flip. Probably not likely. I think, 22 Democrat seats, 10.
If the Democrats keep, not to interrupt, but if the Democrats keep going on with the strategy that they're going on recently with only talking about Stormy Daniels and Russiagate, totally, then no, it's not. It's not. That's not going to work.
You know, soybean prices dropped 5% today.
Yeah.
Okay, that's important for this district. Yeah. That's what we need to be talking about. This tariff with China. Okay. Stormy Daniels, I don't give a damn. You know,
right.
You know, yeah. All right. But soybean prices dropping 5% today. That's huge. Corn futures plummeting. That's huge. Okay. We sell 1/3 of the soybean crop. I think it's roughly right. 1/3 of our soybean crop goes to China.
Yeah.
Now you want to see economic impact to a sector whose income is already half what it was 5 years ago, to a sector that is, most people need to work one other, if not 2 other jobs just to keep afloat when small farmers. That's what we need to be talking about. Totally agree.
I mean, well, to go to the next question that I wanted to ask.
10-minute warning, so go ahead and ask.
Okay. The next question, because to go to the next thing, when you talk about not just these tariffs, but if our jobs are not going to be going overseas because of things like NAFTA, CAFTA, then our jobs are also being automated, and that's another big thing that the automotive industry, which it has been doing, other companies like Kellogg has been doing, and Amazon has been doing. And then if they're not being automated or shipped overseas, then they're being imported into private prisons. So my question to you, if you're going to especially represent this district, what is your economic plan to make sure that we have sustainable jobs in the 6th district, and we have actually a livable wage in the 6th district?
Okay. First of all, I'm for raising the minimum wage to 15.
Okay.
For big businesses right away. I think you ratchet it up for smaller businesses. Once again, we can argue whether that's 25 people or 50 people, or we can go on that forever. But that's been my position, and I think that's what you do, first of all. Secondly, I think we need to start blending the high school experience with the community college experience. I went about 3 weeks ago to IBEW, had a job fair at the Air Zoo. So I just went out by myself. I just went out, I want to see what this was. It was, Thursday night or something. It started at 5 o'clock. I got there right about 5 o'clock. There were 40 people lined up there. And I went to the IBEW, the union guy running it, who, by the way, I'm the only candidate who's already been endorsed by a major union, which I'm very proud of as a business person. But anyways, I went up to the IBEW I run it, and I said, tell me about this. He said, we have so many openings for jobs that we can't fill. And he said, but we don't have trained people. And like I said, there were 40-some people lined up there to get the training. Well, the mechanisms are there to give people the training they need. The unions have apprenticeship programs. The unions have training programs. Why we aren't funding those programs through the Department of Labor, the Department of Education? God save us with Betsy DeVos running the Department of Education. But anyways, we can go on for that for another hour. But so we've got to train people with the job. The jobs are there. There was an article the other day. There's a housing shortage in Grand Rapids of modest income housing. They don't have the trained people to build the houses. So we've got to spend the money. We've got to prioritize our education dollars and focus it on real people and real jobs with real results.
I mean, if you're asking why isn't that funded, especially in Michigan, Rick Snyder gave a $1.7 billion tax break to multinational corporations in Michigan, like Nestle, which is taking money, which is using that same tax break money, which was back when he first became governor, and now is using that money to take fresh water away from Michigan when Flint and Detroit still doesn't have clean drinking water.
If you want someone to defend Rick Snyder, you're talking to the wrong guy.
No, I'm not.
But I will tell you right here on this campus. So, and I'll probably be corrected on the numbers, but these are ballpark. I was on the Western Board for 11 years. I was very proud of Dieter Nelson. I think back then, I'm a ballpark at 70% of the funding came from the state, 70, 75 up there. What is it now? 25? Mm-hmm. You guys might know better than I do. I was with one of the leaders of the teachers' unions. And I said, you got to be kidding. I mean, that's incomprehensible to me. But budgets are demonstrations of your values, and they also have direct impact on results. And whether it's the federal budget or whether it's the state budget, we've misprioritized ourselves and where we're spending money and how we're approaching this.
Can I kind of want to interject, George? And this is a question about climate and also kind of speaking about like corporations like Nestle or here more locally, there's a corporation called Wolverine Oil and Gas that was trying to extract fossil fuels from public land.
Oh yeah.
And I was curious, like, what are you gonna do, like, as a congressman, if you win, to defend the people of the 6th District against the practices of people like Nestle, Wolverine Oil and Gas, who are trying to expedite climate change, and what?
It's not just expedite climate change. They want to do basically fracking in the 6th District.
You fund the EPA. You put someone in charge who believes in its mission. Ironically, we all know the EPA was started by Richard Nixon. They had great people running. Christy Todd Whitman, William Ruckelshaus. These people believed in the mission. But what you need to do is have people there. I mean, it has now been turned into an instrument to attack the environment. What was it? In the first 2 or 3 months, they actually promulgated a reg allowing mining waste to be dumped into rivers. I mean, what the hell is that for the EPA?
They were also letting factory farms spray the fecal matter in the air.
On and on. Yeah. So I mean, the first line of defense is you fund and support the EPA. You specifically, in this case, you start congressional oversight of Region 5, which we are Region 5. Mm-hmm. There has been no congressional oversight of Region 5 that I know of since Trump's been president. Okay. There's no oversight of the EPA, for that matter.
Well, but even before Trump came into office, though, there were still these big environmental problems. The Obama administration allowed Arctic drilling. The Paris Climate Agreement really did not go as far as it needed to, and most people point the finger towards, the American government's role. Now, granted, there's a lot that goes into that. Our Republican Congress was very combative about it. And do you want to kind of finish on that point, Lawrence?
The other point that I wanted to get to on that is that this goes back to the first question that we asked about the donation to Fred Upton. This is around that same time. This is when Fred Upton started taking money from the Koch brothers, and his stance on climate change is worse than the head of the EPA right now. So again, this is.
But you know what you're missing the point is that, like I said, I mean, Western Michigan University. My guess is they've given to Fred Upton. I know they've given a lot of.
I'm not.
No.
Yeah.
But because you support someone doesn't say you support the agenda. When you're an advocate, you're working on a project or a cause or a mission that they are involved with. Okay, I mean, I have never lobbied on climate change. Okay, I have never lobbied
against climate change.
Yeah.
Okay,
No. But I mean, I've never. You know, what I was lobbying for was cancer research. What I was lobbying for is food. This is when I had my own small business, which I've had for 12 years. Right?
Was this before or after you were a lawyer?
Oh, I've been a lawyer since.
This is okay. I got you.
But all I'm saying is, it is very unfair to imply that just because you supported someone with a campaign contribution, you support everything they stand for in every way, shape, or form. I mean, Bernie Sanders supported a right to life candidate in Omaha. Okay, well, I don't begrudge Bernie Sanders weighed some things, but you can't just incorporate everything by reference and say that's what you're helping.
I think what the crux of the question isn't necessarily like who you donated to in the past. It's just just putting it like as concisely as possible. There's a corporation in the 6th District that is harming the environment, and yes, strengthen the EPA, but are you would you as a congressperson go toe to toe with that corporation specifically?
Absolutely. I've got a record. I've got a record of going toe to toe. You know who stood up for the unions when I was on the board here? They came to me on prevailing. It was me, the company guy. That's who stood up and defended the unions. And I'll quote.
That is a part. I did check that out.
Ask Don Cooney. Okay. Ask Len. And so what I'm saying, I'll stand up to anybody, anytime, anywhere. Okay. If I think it's wrong, and I've got a track record of doing so. And so will I take on a corporation? You're damn right I will. Will I encourage the plaintiff's bar, which might be a quicker way to do it? You damn right I would. All right. I was proud to see the Kalamazoo County Commission just last night say they're going to pursue this lawsuit on the opioids and the drug companies.
That's
good for them. And you know what's the quickest way to fix it? It's a bunch of lawyers. Right? It sure as hell is. The plaintiff's bar.
They've been doing a lot.
I can't argue about that. I have checked out a good portion of your record. And I know you have to go. I would love to have you back up here because there's a couple more questions that I really want to ask you.
No, this is fun.
Yeah.
With you guys.
I really do appreciate it. Just two quick things before you have to go. The March for Our Lives came up, was a recent thing that just came up, and there's a lot of division especially in Michigan when it comes to gun rights and
you want to hear my position?
I want to hear some of your policies on it.
I'll get you right straight at it. In fact, I've been endorsed, but that's not the right word. I should take that back. I've been designated by Moms Demand Action as a campaign of distinction. Okay. Because of my position on gun control. We got 3 pieces to it. You ban assault weapons. Period. Okay. You ban them. 2, you close the domestic abuse loopholes. 3, you establish red flag provisions. And the red flag provisions, familiar for your readers, which I think is an essential element, it allows judges to be judges. It's been 19 years since Columbine. In almost every one of these instances, people knew something was wrong with these people. They knew they were troubled. They knew they had problems. There was neighbors, there was friends, there was Facebook, there were relatives, you name it. And a red flag provision would allow someone who's aware of this with probable cause to go to a judge and say that person shouldn't have a gun, nor should that person be allowed to buy a gun. And that's the way you can help prevent these things from happening.
Quick addition, would you also support universal background checks as well?
And could I get one? Can I have the last question?
Go ahead.
Just I want real quick. Foreign policy. Do you support stopping the endless wars, cutting down the military budget, and how do you feel about the recent human rights abuses going on in Gaza?
Okay.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. On the defense budget. In 2015, the Defense Department's own internal budget review identified $125 billion of waste. This is the Defense Department, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, sure, we can cut the defense budget. 2, Afghanistan. We have a war that has been going on 17 years. The Congress has been totally derelict in their duty. One of their primary functions is the war powers.
That's right.
There is no congressional oversight. I'm on the board of the Levin Institute at the Levin Center at Wayne State Law School. Okay, we teach congressional oversight, bipartisan congressional oversight, to people in Washington, to state legislators, and actually some in Europe. Once again, the lack of congressional oversight. There is a war going on that real people are getting killed, and there's no accountability. There's no end game. You know, God bless Senator McCain, right? Mm-hmm. And people like him have said, what is the end game? Well, how are we out of here? It just mindlessly goes on. And Congress has been totally derelict in its duty.
All right. Well, I guess that's probably all you have time for, George.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Please come by. There are a couple more list of questions that I want to ask you, but thank you for definitely.
Can we do it over a beer?
I mean, we could, but we
can bring our phones.
I mean, we'll have to bring a phone or a camera or something so the rest of everybody can hear.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much, George. Everybody, you're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Hey, guys, what's up?
Yo, that was illuminating.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Thank you, George, for coming in.
Introducing us, so people will know who's talking, because we just randomly started talking. I was
we're here all the time.
I know.
Yeah. There's Lawrence. There's Luke.
Hi.
Yeah.
We're staples.
I know that, but I'm just saying.
We'll be clear. Like we've talked. I don't know, like a degree of smack about Mr. Franklin on the show before, and like I do appreciate him coming on, and like I said, tough but fair, and I think I'd like to do like kind of once we get all the candidate interviews done, maybe do like a little post-mortem of all the interviews and kind of
I'm not gonna lie, there's certain things that he said that I agree with. There are a good number of things that he said that I don't agree with, when he comes back here again, then I will say it to his face, because I don't feel like saying it right now, and he's gone.
Yeah,
I will say it to his face when he gets. But that was pretty interesting.
It was, and so we got a lot of topics to talk about, and I don't know what y'all want to get on top of first. There's people are striking all over the country. Disney workers are striking. Teachers are striking. We've got. I mentioned it at the end of the Franklin interview. Is the situation in Gaza, and I want to talk talk a little bit about how the American media deals with it.
I say we hit that first because it's kind of major.
You also have innocent protesters being shot in Palestine as well.
That's what
being shot on the border.
Yeah.
But you have. Another day in America, another black person gets shot by police officers and being called criminals when the person only had a cell phone. On the same day that a serial bomber was called a nerdy kid that was misunderstood in the mainstream media. That was interesting to see.
Well, let's not forget that Nicholas Cruz was really just a misunderstood teen. Just needs more love in his life.
Oh my God!
And really, it's the kids who are organizing these marches who were bullying him.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because at the actual school, they're like, no, he was the bully. He was going around bullying people.
I do want to talk about. I talked about guns in the last section, and there was a thing that just happened recently with the YouTube office being shot up by a woman. Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about guns. I do want to hit that really quickly.
I actually know nothing about this story.
I've seen a little bit of on the news.
Okay. So basically, for those who are not in the know, yesterday a young woman who is a YouTube person, YouTube subscriber. I don't know her name. I forgot her name. Was complaining that YouTube was suppressing her videos, were censoring her, and
I did.
So she took a handgun to the corporate office of YouTube and shot up the building.
Okay,
she shot 3 people and then shot herself.
It's interesting. One of my friends was kind of wrote some commentary on this, and this is very interesting because what she's talking about. The shooter, that is a real thing. YouTube has been demonetizing videos, and a point that my friend brought up is like, even outside the kind of political aspect of it, I think we've talked about how they've used this to target a lot of left-wing commentaries like Jimmy Dore and Tim Black,
and also right-wing
people. Yeah. Demonetization has some adverse side effects that they never really considered. A lot of people. This is how they make their money, is through like these YouTube channels, these YouTube videos. You take that avenue away from them, just to make this arbitrary decision as a corporation that YouTube is, then you're going to have these economic side effects that typically don't result in a mass shooting, but it reminds me somewhat of there was a taxi driver in New York several months ago who killed himself and left a suicide note
because of Uber.
Yeah, basically left a note like, I will not live on slave wages. And I mean, he didn't commit violence against others, but he killed himself over this kind of economic disenfranchisement. So, you know,
the thing about this girl, I mean, she talked about animal rights in her videos. She did a lot of really dumb, silly stuff like a lot of YouTubers did. I don't advocate for violence. If you have a problem, if you have a problem with YouTube, and you have a small channel, I was like, we put our stuff on YouTube. So, yeah. I mean, Andy, you put your stuff on YouTube.
We do.
So we have a small channel as well. If we started making money on this, like Kyle Kulinski, like Jimmy Dore, and they started to demonetize us, we couldn't do Patreon as much or something, then yeah, I would feel some type of way. I would be angry as well. So I get her fury on that. But taking it out by doing acts of violence makes you just as bad as the people that she was condemning or talking bad about when she was talking about cruelty to animals.
Yeah, and it's really ineffective too. I mean, what would have been a better option? Maybe like if this woman had instead reached out to a bunch of other people who'd had their videos demonetized, and maybe then you can have a large group of people go to YouTube headquarters with signs, maybe do sit-ins. There are ways to bring attention to an issue without trying to kill people.
Right. Like,
I mean, really, what it sounds like it comes down to is algorithms.
Algorithm.
Which really means Skynet is real. Your livelihood is determined by an unknowable mathematical equation that dictates what you see and who you interact with.
There is literally an AI CIA program called Skynet.
No. You want to know how real?
Irony's not a thing.
We're laughing about it, but Lee Camp last week just did a video about on Lee Camp, who's the host of Redacted Tonight, did a video about how police are using algorithms to see where potential crimes could be committed and where potential crimes will be committed, and how they should put their resources into the parts of their city where they should be putting more police officers in.
So we're Minority Report now.
It's literally Minority Report. Here's the thing.
Particularly because they're reporting on minorities.
No. But that's the point. Yeah. Because the algorithms were saying, oh, well, you're black and your mom had a drug case before, your dad has had a drug case before, so you are still living in this area, you might mess around and have a drug case. So we should put more police officers near you. It's literally designed to be racist.
Yeah, and the thing is, the people who advocate for it say by removing that human decision making out of it, like it is their intention, and let's take it at face value that because we'll have algorithms decide this, racially biased police. This could be like a solution to racially biased policing. However, if you devise these algorithms based on data that was created by racially biased policing, then all you're going to get is a racially biased algorithm.
That's what it is. That's big. For if you want more context on that story, please go and watch Redacted Tonight. Go watch it on YouTube and on, I forgot what channel it is, on RT America, where their tagline is, where their comedian show where Americans in America talking about American news are called foreign agents.
Yep.
And it's amazing. But it's another thing about that issue, and I know we're going off, but we got off on the topic. The girl at YouTube, the girl that got the gun at YouTube, it coincides with the March for Our Lives, in the sense that people weren't just marching because schools were being shot up. There were Black Lives Matter protesters that were also out there as well. Mm-hmm. There were police that were also out there marching with the teenagers, and they were saying that we need comprehensive gun reform, but we also need to address the other underlying issues like police brutality, like the flood of guns the flood of guns to the black market into intercities, into gangs, into things like that. We have to address all of it, and we can address all of it if we have comprehensive gun legislation, like a ban on assault weapons, a ban on a tax and or ban on semi-automatic weapons, a universal background checks, regulating guns and bullets the same way that we regulate cars. Like having stricter gun control will make our society safer, just like how it's made the societies of every other country that has comprehensive gun control, how they're safer. For example, Japan. Japan had 13 mass shootings. What was it, in 2015 or like a year ago or something?
Japan did?
Japan had like only 13 that entire year.
Oh, okay.
That entire year. Now America is 3 times the size of Japan. And so that means it was 39 mass shootings. Since we're 13 times bigger than Japan, our suicide rates dwarfs that. Our suicide rates are like 10 times bigger than Japan's, and that's just suicides by guns. It's about comprehensive gun legislation. It's about policy and having people that fight for it. And another topic that we didn't get to was since Mr. George calls himself a businessman, I wanted to hear his thoughts about the fact that Debbie Stabenow and some of the Democrats helped the Republicans deregulate Wall Street. That is something that I want to know. I want to know his thoughts about that.
Yeah. And, well, referring to that really horrible, it tweaked Dodd-Frank in order to, basically it lowered the threshold for, it increased the threshold for what is considered like a multinational or a large, too big to fail bank. So all of a sudden, banks like Countrywide, like one of the main culprits of the 2008 mortgage crisis, are now considered small business banks and are not subject to the type of regulation that is supposed to prevent another 2008 type incident from happening.
I mean, for those who understand the reason why we talk junk about Dodd-Frank all the time, Dodd-Frank was weak sauce regulation, and the reason why it was weak sauce regulation is because the banks. Bring back Glass-Steagall. The reason why Dodd-Frank was weak sauce regulation was because the banks that were too big to fail got bigger. They got bigger after Dodd-Frank. That's not supposed to happen in a society that wants to be stable. You're setting things up for another crash, and that's what they're doing. And by helping the Republicans basically say, hey, we should rip up some more of this regulation that should actually help us. By the Democrats like Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, and I forgot the other dude from Michigan that voted with them. They're helping the Republicans create another crash that we're going to end up suffering through again.
And by the way, like, if some people, some like kind of Democratic people, particularly online, they'll get really upset when they're like, Republicans and Democrats are the same, and they're like, how can you even say that? How can you equate the two? And then it's like, well, look at this bill, and it's like, you shouldn't be worried about me pointing that out. The people who say that and think that are all the hundreds of thousands of Americans out there who are too cynical and apathetic to go out and vote. The people you need to convince to vote. The more Democrats we have in the Democratic Party who are to do the stuff like Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow do, the harder it is to make those people actually give a damn and think that any party actually represents them. So yeah, don't shoot the messenger. Put it that way.
Amen to that. Yeah. Hey, but let's hit another topic. There was another topic that we wanted to talk about. We need to talk about Gaza and what's going on in Palestine. For those who do not know what's going on, There's been protesters in Palestine that's been going to the
Protesters
Israel.
in Gaza.
Protesters in Gaza. Go ahead.
So this is part of their kind of month-long nonviolence campaign. It's completely like nonviolent civil disobedience. Thousands of Gaza residents are involved in this, and essentially they're planning to do it through May. And this was over the weekend when it started. Now, what was the reaction of the Israeli Defense Force? Were they just kind of like standing on a line, watching these protesters peacefully protest? And by all accounts, that is exactly what happened. These people were not violent towards the Israeli forces. The Israeli Defense Force shot 773 people with live ammunition. 17 people are dead. Their reaction on Twitter was, beyond unconscionable. They talk about in terms, we arrived prepared. Everything was accurate. We know where every bullet landed. The UN has called for a resolution of condemnation against the Israeli government and Israel, which is extremely right-wing, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who's been more openly Trumpian over the last couple of years, that, no, our soldiers should be commended. And, one of the things that, doesn't get brought up a lot, and, our listeners, I don't know how many listeners on the program are really in tune to what happens in Palestine, because as we've discussed before, the American news media does a terrible job of being accurate about the situation. There's this great article that Mehdi Hassan wrote for The Intercept, and one of the things he points out is that there's this false equivalency that happens. It's almost exactly like how Trump talked about Charlottesville. Oh, there was bad people on both sides. And if you look at the headlines of like CNN, MSNBC, they describe this as clashes between Israel and Gaza protesters or insurgents or etc. And it makes it sound like there was some sort of battle. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. And, I feel like we've come leaps and bounds in the age of the internet. People have alternate portals for their news where they can learn about what's actually going on in Gaza. But for most of its history, you'll look... I hate to make any kind of joke out of this, but it's a good parallel. It's like the American people are standing up and you're like, good Lord, what is happening in there? And the kitchen is on fire, and the American news media stares right back at you and they're like, clashes?
What it is that you have things like the boycotts, divestment, sanctions. That's an actual policy that American citizens can do against Israel because how
international movement.
International movement that not just Americans but people can do around the world to that will affect Israel because of how they're treating Palestinians when they have literally taken Palestinian land. And it was the United Nations that said Israel can take said land, and they're not listening to international law when that same UN says to Israel, you're treating the Palestinians in their country, in their own land, like second-class citizens.
Yeah.
And because we give over $1 billion, the United States gives over $1 billion to Israel, we're like, well, hey, we commit human right violations all the time. We're not going to say anything about our friend committing human rights violations against other people.
Yep. And it's so often painted that, it's like in the media, it's like a tit for tat thing. It's like, they shouldn't fight with one another, or there's an equivalence made between Well, and on right-wing American media, it's all like these Palestinian people are terrorists. How dare they suicide bomb, the innocent nation of Israel that's just trying to defend itself. I mean, you got to keep in mind, like, the people in Gaza, the people in Palestine, they're not like some foreign invader that wants to just see all of Israel dead. Now, granted, there were some early, like in some of the earliest and then very much scrapped kind of mission statements of Hamas, there is some language in there about, the decimation of Israel, but that was taken out of context, and it was something that was basically said, like, no, that is not our position. That is not the movement's position. It's been that way for decades, but Israel props that up and trots that out to make it seem like the Palestinians are not fighting because their land has been taken from them, but because they have some sort of irrational hatred of Israel or Jews, and that is simply not the case. The reason people in Gaza and Palestine fight to begin with, no matter what you think about it, is because their land was taken. It's a very rational and very understandable reason to excuse me, fight and get involved. And just to like give you a sense of context, just how false this equivalency is. They talk about like these rockets that will get fired into Israel, and maybe a few people get injured, or something like that. As recently, as recently as 2014, and this is just an example from Mehdi's article. For the third time in 6 years, the Israeli Air Force, they pounded the Gaza Strip. They dropped bombs on schools, hospitals, apartment buildings. They killed more than 1,500 Palestinian civilians, and there's 500 children in the process. And, the Secretary of State at the time, who was Hillary Clinton, her response to it was, Hamas provoked another attack, and Israel has the right to defend itself. Defend itself against who? 500 innocent children?
I mean,
is that... Oh,
okay. Well, yeah. I mean, to actually cut in here,
yeah.
This is representative...
Sorry, Luke.
No, this is representative of how American media generally acts and reports on things. Especially when it comes to conflict. Especially when it comes to conflict that America has interest in, i.e., it involves our allies or whatnot. It ignores the cause of the tension. It ignores the fact that it treats retaliatory action as instigation, when in fact it's retaliatory. This is Hamas and Israel being one of them, but I would, if somebody came into Michigan, into Kalamazoo, and said, "You all have to leave because this is our land now. You all have to leave, and we have the military firepower to force you out and to keep you out." Oh, well, I don't really want to leave my home. I've been here my whole life. So I would like to fight to get that back.
It's not just that. They say you have to leave. This is our land.
This is our land now.
No. This is our land now. We're gonna build malls and community centers. We're gonna build homes here.
We're going to illegally occupy the land you actually own.
Wait. But here's the kicker. You know, all the water and electricity and energy that we're using, you still have to pay for it. That's the part that never gets brought up. That's like someone moving into your house, taking your stuff and saying, "Hey, yo, the bill's coming. You still have to pay for it."
Rent's due in like a week, man. Do you have that for? I don't live there anymore. Yeah, but you still gotta pay. You still gotta pay your rent. You kicked me out. You got to pay your rent, man.
Wait. It's not just like you got to pay your rent. It's like, hey,
by the way,
you want to? You're supposed to.
My power got cut off. Did you make sure you got the energy bill? I need my internet paid.
You wanted to walk around your kitchen? You wanted to walk around your kitchen at around 10 o'clock? No, you can't, because you don't live here anymore. That's that argument. That's the argument with Palestine and Israel that makes me angry. And it's not like America hasn't done. It's not like our media is not it's just so inept that they can't focus on real issues. They're choosing not to because we give money to Israel, and Israel is one of our biggest allies. It's the same thing with with Saudi Arabia and the way that Dr. Cornel West talks about it. He said, if Saudi Arabia and Israel was giving us cabbages instead of oil, we would not be friends with them anymore. and it's the same thing with Israel. If Israel was not buying our weapons and fueling our military industrial complex, then we wouldn't be messing with them anymore. We wouldn't deal with them anymore. But we do. And it's not like, and again, it's not like Israel doesn't have a if you're looking at it from their side, it's not like they don't have a stake in it. They've come to the agreement of the two-state solution to the 96 border wall multiple times. They have done that in their peace agreements. Jimmy Carter helped push out that peace agreement.
That's right.
The problem is that you have a right-wing group in Israel that Benjamin Netanyahu is a part of that says, well, first you have to say that we are a legitimate state, and first you have to agree with our plans and everything that we want, or there is no deal. They are basically Benjamin Netanyahu is basically the Ted Cruz of Israel. That is how he deals with policy, and it infuriates me because you have peaceful protesters being shot and killed because they want a peaceful resolution.
They want a peaceful resolution. They want their homes back, and they want Israel to stop illegally occupying their land.
What the United Nations said you're doing. The United Nations said.
That's the other thing is like whenever Palestinians go to the United Nations and go, look, okay, so we had this deal with Israel that we could get a two-state solution going and everything, but then they reneged on us. Can you do something about it? And then Israel's like, why didn't you just come to us? We could have worked out a deal. Why didn't you? We did, and you reneged. So we're going to the international community, and now you're bad-mouthing us to the international community because you backstabbed us in our own talks when we actually came to you first.
No, the other thing that will piss me off is the response that you will get from Democrats who are supposed to be on the right issue of this. Chuck Schumer, you should be ashamed of yourself. When Chuck Schumer said recently that people that criticize Israel are anti-Semitic. Because you criticize Israel with facts. You are anti-Semitic.
They use that against everybody. They use that against peace activist Jews. It's like, oh, you're a self-hating Jew.
Like I'm like what? No, like here's the thing. It's gotten to the point that even Bernie Sanders won't even talk about boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. And I'm like, and it makes me angry because I'm like, that's the one person who I'm like should be supporting that.
To be fair, he did come out. I think he was the only person in Congress who came out and was like, hey, what just happened was bad.
Yeah, he's the only person. No, he was the only person during the 2016 election that did not go to CPAC.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Like, oh, God. If you listen to those speeches at CPAC, oh, God.
I don't want to.
All right. So I think maybe let's take a break and then maybe pivot onto a different topic. Y'all are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
This is George W. Bush, and you're listening to 89.1 WIDR, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Kalamazoo. You know what you're listening to, Kalamazoo, Michigan, man. What are you, stupid?
WIDR is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations, on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. So, okay, we've got a little bit of time left, at least with Lawrence here. So, another big piece of news that we didn't really get a chance to talk about was all these strikes going on around the country. West Virginia, Oklahoma. There's some stuff going on in Florida with the Disney Corporation. So
yeah, Mickey Mouse said, y'all say I'm a part-time worker, but y'all got me working 60, 70 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where are my benefits?
Yeah.
Where are my benefits?
Yeah. I'm like Disney Corp. You just made about almost $500 million with Black Panther. You telling me you can't pay me a living wage? Yeah. You can't pay me more than
I'm really tired, Mr. Manager. No, yeah. Nice. We're coming else for the bathroom break. Yeah. Go sleep in your car, Mickey. I think
Mickey's not the one sleeping in his car.
No. Well, I mean the guy in the Mickey costume.
No.
Mickey is up in Cinderella's castle with the whip.
He's got that prime
that's
real estate.
Daffy Duck is the one that's sleeping on the curb. That's Donald Duck, not Daffy. Yeah. Donald Duck.
But I think it is amazing that it's one of the most visible mega corporations in the world, and I mean we might sometime in the future there's going to be a war between them and Amazon, and but anyway,
because it seems like
and they're having this company, they own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they are doing better financially than just about any time in their history.
They also own Indiana Jones.
Yes. They own Indiana Jones.
Essentially, anything Lucas put his hands on, they own.
Yeah,
basically.
And yet, this same corporation cannot pay to give their people, give their workers a living wage. It's like, oh no, we can pay for X-Men and Galactus, but you want to be able to actually live off your income? No.
Just so people can understand how bad it is, there are Kyle Kolinsky from Secular Talk did a wonderful video on it, and this news coverage is not getting any news. It's not getting any traction, and it should. There are people who work for Disney Corporation going through some of them are homeless during certain parts of the year because Disney Corporation will not pay them a living wage. That some of the people who work for them will be homeless. Let me remind you that Disneyland, they have hotels on their property, and the people who work there cannot afford to sleep at those hotels.
That's right.
Oh, they can't sleep at the hotels because that's where would their paying customers stay?
That shade.
I'd like pivot too a little bit. So that's not getting much coverage. Another thing that's not getting much coverage, and we've seen this over the last couple weeks, the striking teachers in West Virginia and Oklahoma. And the reason this is such a big story too is that this is growing. It wasn't just like this kind of one and done thing. So you had the teachers doing a strike in West Virginia, and let's be clear too, this was not a coordinated strike with the teachers union. The teachers union eventually got on board and decided to support the strike, but this is what they call a wildcat strike. They call that a wildcat strike because it is an illegal strike. These teachers did not know what the consequences of striking would be. Legally, they could have all just been fired. Maybe like a kind of something like a Ronald Reagan with the air traffic controllers thing could have been pulled. But the teachers effectively used their leverage, the solidarity of their labor force to get better working conditions. And then Oklahoma saw what was happening. They decided to do the same thing. And then down in Kentucky, there's this recent development where the state legislature just tried to put into some BS through like a trash bill. Or it was like like a garbage or waste disposal bill. And they put in some stuff to basically destroy the teachers' pensions. And so virtually overnight, there was a mass call in sick thing with all the teachers of Kentucky, and they're on the verge of starting their own wildcat strike. And the thing that these all have in common is you'll hear about this on the show. You hear about this in independent media sources. I haven't seen Fox News talk about this. I haven't seen CNN talk about this. I haven't seen MSNBC talk about this. So there's not many things that these left-wing, right-wing corporations agree on, but one thing that they do is do not show working class people striking and winning. That's a bad thing.
Well, the thing is because if it goes against corporate profits, which the teacher striking would go against corporate profits, then we can't show it. By showing it, we give it power. Now, the other thing that makes the Oklahoma strike really interesting is the Republican governor, Mary Fallon. Her comment about the Oklahoma teachers strike was saying that the Oklahoma teachers demanding better wages is like a teenager who wants a better car. Now, let me remind you that Oklahoma ranks 49th in teacher pay. 49th. And also, let me also remind you, in Oklahoma and Virginia and in West Virginia and other states, they shortened the work week.
They shortened the school week, so teachers had more time to spend at their second jobs so they could live.
Yeah, their second jobs like at Walmart. That also does not pay them a living wage.
Yeah.
So instead of us putting our money into education, instead of us putting money into the future of our country, we're going to, instead of taking that $1.7 trillion tax cut that we just gave to billionaires who are just going to stash it in the Cayman Islands, we're going to cut the school week to American children so that their teachers could go work at Walmart.
And let's not forget that that's kind of a move that further down the line, corporate America will start complaining about, like how our workforce isn't as productive as foreign workforces because we're not as educated.
That's right.
We're not as up to speed on mathematics, science, or anything like that. Like, we'd be at risk of losing that kind of technological edge that America's had for decades now. And this is one of those moves. It's like, well, if you want us to remain competitive in a global market, you need to invest in education. You need to invest in a future workforce. You need to invest in the public good, because if you don't, you will fall behind.
Also, to add to that, for those American children who don't mind traveling, you can travel to Germany or over to Amsterdam into other countries for college, and they will give you free tuition and free room and board.
Well, it's like
for you to go.
It's like €300 a semester.
Yeah,
you know, actually,
you right.
I did want to add just a little bit of historical context to this. So, you notice this is popping up in state after state. One, there's a couple of different components to this. The defunding of public education, it's not just like Betsy DeVos popped out of a pumpkin in Grand Rapids and all this started happening. No, this has been happening for decades, and it's been part of an overt attempt to, basically make sure that, one, dismantling the public school system so that they'll have to profitize education, put it in the private sector, and there was one big geopolitical event that let that happen. There used to be a huge emphasis on education in this country, and that was when we were embroiled in the Cold War. There was a demand that we need to have an educated workforce, a smart population that can compete and basically outthink the Soviet Union. And one of the main reasons that pivoted is once we no longer had a big enemy like that, it was the emphasis was not on we didn't necessarily need an educated workforce because we could outsource constantly. If we need brain power, we can bring somebody in from overseas, or we can offshore our intellectual property and have other people work on it. So it became a disincentive for the corporations of America to have a well-educated populace, because they can get that same thing more cheaply, more freely from workers in other countries.
But I mean, if you have a more well-educated population, then it's harder to brainwash them. As Sinclair Broadcasting, how their latest must-run ad went, and how the internet saw that from a mile away. Mm-hmm. It has been tearing that asunder. Thank you, John Oliver, TYT, and everybody else who's been crafting on it.
What's really cool about that is we've talked about the Sinclair thing off and on last couple months, and this seems to be the point where everybody's really starting to notice it. And what's really cool to me is I was a little weird because the whole Sinclair thing is, a lot of it can get swept up in the, quote unquote resistance,
the hashtag
movement.
Resistance.
But what I've been noticing though is I hang out and I talk to a lot of conservative and libertarian type folks, and they are just as concerned about having this media monopoly that has so much control over your local news, because what local news is supposed to be is news, opinion, information from a local perspective. And when it is controlled by Sinclair, which is basically trying to corner the market in about 70%?
70%. It is 78%. Currently they have a 78% reach in local markets. So essentially, 7.8 out of 10 homes, Sinclair reaches you. Sinclair must-runs reach your house. And the Trump FCC has opened up avenues in order for Sinclair to merge with the next largest company that owns local stations and news outlets to make that reach even bigger.
To make it to 85%.
Yep.
And the thing that makes again the conversation that we were talking about earlier with the teacher strikes and the broadcast of it. Mainstream media cares about sensationalism. That's what they care about. That's what feeds them. That's the number one thing that you will see on MSNBC, NBC, CNN, Fox News. I hate to agree with the lady from the NRA, but if it's not people being shot, I remember what you're talking about.
She made a really great point about how the media they love
the tears of white women are our ratings goal. Here's the thing. Yeah, I mean look at Channel 3. If it's not the local black person who just got shot, it's cat stories. And if it's not cat stories and who just got shot that week, there's not a lot of substance. There's not a lot of substance, and I don't say it because I used to watch Channel 3 all the time. I still do.
Oh yeah,
once in a while.
Yeah, my family loves the channel too.
It's just that. When's the last time you seen Channel 3 talk about money and politics? When's the last time you seen Channel 3 talk about a living wage? When's the last time you seen Channel 3 actually have a substantive talk about gun control?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. They used to have a guy on there. What was his name? Something Pete's Corner. I'm having a hard time remembering his name, but he was an opinion guy who would come on, and he was he was independent. Some of his pieces were kind of more left, some were more right. But yeah, it's I'm trying to think. It's when was the last time I saw that guy on there? And
no, I mean, when's the last time? Here's the thing. It's been almost 1,500 days. It's 1,446 days since Flint has had clean drinking water.
Yeah.
When's the last time you seen Channel 3 talk about Flint, Michigan not having clean drinking water?
Yeah, and that's
back when it stopped being sensationalized.
Right.
Yeah. Back when there were beginning to make moves to quote unquote fix it that have all stalled and fallen flat, and now it's we're still doing bottled water rationing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, or the fact that the $100 million that the Obama administration was supposed to send to Michigan, that Rick Snyder appealed and said that he stalled, and that the Michigan Supreme Court said that you need to pay for people's water because you're charging them water they can't drink.
Yeah. And
he still chose not to, even though the Michigan Supreme Court said that the state should be providing bottled water, and he still is not doing it. Nah, I'm sorry, dog. If you are a local news person who cares about journalism, the Flint story and the Detroit story when it comes to clean water and what they're doing with housing should be your number one thing that you should be talking about in Michigan. It should be something that you talk about every day, because it's not
even on a local level. I don't think when that oil and gas company was talking about drilling in our public parks, I don't recall any of the local. Well, no, actually, I'll take that back. I think they were there. I know 8 and Channel 8 and what was the other one? It's there, but yeah, and it is distressing. There's people who talk about they'll watch the news and it almost looks like their local news anchors are being held hostage, and it's funny to think about I've watched Channel 3. I'll see Andy. It's you can almost tell which of these are the must-run stories, because I'll see Andy Dominiani starting to get really kind of tensed up and kind of uncomfortable. It's hey,
blinking Morse code to tell us what you need. SOS torture.
No. I think the thing that made it really crazy is that you had people who were former Sinclair broadcasters talking about how it's propaganda, how what they are doing, what they're saying, and is propaganda, and that the fact that they don't work there anymore they hate themselves because they had to do it, and they were doing it because they needed the money.
Actually, that's most workers in America.
On that note, actually, goodness, it already
is it escaping your brain? Is it
no? It already cycled out. So because of the most recent the Deadspin viral video, a couple current employees of Sinclair-owned broadcast stations have come out anonymously to talk about how they don't like what's happening, how it's propaganda, how essentially Sinclair is turning into state-controlled media because the controller of the guy who runs or is heading Sinclair is a Trump surrogate. He used to run the Trump campaign. Sinclair released a memo that gave a very thinly veiled threat about, hey, if you talk bad about us, we will, there will be there are implications. And part of those implications, part of it is also, I was reading, you can't just quit a Sinclair contract. If you quit a Sinclair contract, Sinclair, part of that, your contract is if you quit before your contract is terminated, you have to pay 40% of your annual salary back to Sinclair.
Oh, man.
So
That's
it
rough.
literally is, they are stuck because they can't, and if they leave, there will be major financial, what's the word?
Consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Major financial consequences for these people who want so dearly to come out and speak out against what they're doing.
It's the same thing with Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post.
Yeah.
The Washington Post can't talk bad about Amazon. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos gonna be like, what did you just say? Get that dude out here.
BT Dubs, Jeff Bezos, if you're listening,
Two-day ship that employee out of there.
Jeff Bezos, also, if you are listening, I would humbly request that you send me approximately $2 million. You won't miss it. You won't miss it. You have so much money, you literally won't.
You can send it on Amazon Prime, 2 days.
I mean, it's Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, and Bill Gates. Those three men have just as much wealth as half the country. Let that sink in as we talk about how the majority of the country doesn't have $30,000 does not make $30,000 a year.
All right. I think on that note, we should probably take a break. We have a guest on. He's going to be talking about some unfortunate experiences he's been having up more locally here in Allegan. So, you're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Allegan Humane Society is a non-for-profit, no-kill animal shelter that has been serving Allegan, Van Buren, and surrounding areas for almost 50 years. They are hosting their Cares Fund Drive and are over halfway to their $500,000 goal. Allegan can currently house around 30 dogs and 100 cats. Money raised from the Cares campaign will go to build a new shelter, which will expand this capacity by 20%. Allegan Humane Society has 20 dogs and 40 cats that are microchipped, spayed and neutered, and fully vaccinated, ready for adoption right now. To adopt a pet, donate to the Cares Fund Drive, or find out more, feel free to visit them on the web at www.al-van.org.
This is an open slot in the wider clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the support page.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Now we are joined by a citizen of Southwest Michigan here, Mr. Robert Holland. Say hello to the listeners out there, if you would.
Hello, listeners.
So, I invited Robert on my show because we had a discussion about some really unpleasant experiences he's been having up near in the Allegan area. And it's kind of a complicated nut, but it is unfortunately not too dissimilar from other situations we talked on the show where there are people in the area that acquire just a little bit of power and they ended up bullying the average folks out there in the community. So, Robert, what happened with your story is, you started with, you own some land that had been kind of passed down through your family. Somebody with some connections ended up kind of twisting an occurrence around on you. You ended up going to jail for a little bit and going through a lot of legal BS, as it were, and it ended up kind of worse for the wear. So let's start out by kind of painting the picture. So you own some land up in the Allegan area, and could you kind of describe that and the kind of the history of that land there?
I've had 60 acres up in Allegan for about 34 years now, and I started selling some lots off in 1997 when after the Land Division Act, I built a private road and sold some lots, and then started having issues with some of the folks that I believe really wanted the rest of my lake frontage, because I do have 650 foot of lake frontage. That seems to be a motive issue here. But it's getting to be a real situation. We got people in power that is misusing their power. Let me say abusing our legal system at the taxpayer's expense for a personal vendetta to harm others who have little or no financial means to defend themselves against false police reports and false charges. If my accuser would have gotten his way, I would either be in prison right now or I would be dead because of the circumstances I was treated in the jail in Allegan County.
So let's go back a little bit. Now, you said that some problems started occurring. So you own this land. You sold some of it, or leased. Is it leased or sold? Sold some land off to someone, and you have access to a lakefront. Now, this person ended up retaliating against you for what, from the way you described it, some pretty common sense thing. Could describe, so who is this person and what were they doing? You ended up restricting their lake access, and could you tell us a little bit about the circumstances around that?
Well, when I sold the lots on the property, I gave the individuals, I also built houses on that road for a while, but I gave the individuals that I sold lots to and a lake license down to my lake. I own the property down to the lake, and they were a 20-year revocable lake license, and if they didn't follow the rules that were in a stipulated court order by Judge Beach, then I was able to revoke their license. But my accuser, who happens to be, in his own words, in a court statement, he's the son of a judge in Allegan County. And
he said this specifically in court.
And this is written in court in the transcripts that he is a judge he is the son of a judge in Allegan County. And excuse me, I lost track.
All right, so I was asking, so what did this individual do that made you decide to restrict his lake access?
Well, he wasn't following the rules according to the stipulated court order of Judge Beach. And then so I removed his lake license legally, and then when I wanted to access my lake property, my only access to get down there, I have to go past his home. Well, he falsified a police report, and then falsified charges in Allegan and got me thrown in jail and got false PPOs through these tainted evidence to remove me from my own property. So I have property and I have a lot of lake frontage, but I cannot get access to it because of these false allegations that all the charges now have been dropped.
So we're definitely gonna go, but kind of from what you described, he was basically being negligent. He'd leave the gate, the lake access open, teenagers and stuff would go and trash it overnight and that kind of thing. So you restricted his lake access for some pretty valid reasons. And then several months go by, and so then there's this incident. Now you talked about the PPO. And let's talk a little bit about this incident, this police report that was filed. So let's talk about it from your perspective, and then we'll talk about kind of what they ended up doing with it. So their accusation was that you threatened their daughter. Now, what actually happened? Why did you? And by the way, you called the police. But yeah, tell us what happened, and then we'll kind of dig further into how this situation ended up developing. But
well, I was heading down to my lake property, and a 5-year-old small child come darting out of the shadows out of a yard and toward my car. And so I swerved, of course, away from the child into the ditch. And I called the police and CPS because I was concerned nobody was watching this child. A police officer came out. They talked to the son of the judge and automatically started filing charges against me. And what the testimony from my accusers were that I crossed center line. I drove across an open lane and into their yard and deliberately tried to run over their 5-year-old daughter. And they sat on the stand in the courtroom and perjured themselves and stated this exact fact while his wife and himself were crying with tears and sobbing. And the fact of the matter is, on video, that I have the video, and because all the charges have been dropped because of this video, that the child actually ran across the road center line in front of my car. And the video is very clear when you put it on frame by frame, real slow on a large screen. It's very clear that the child did run in the road. But nevertheless, I had to fight these charges, waste tens of thousands of dollars, and my accuser, he hasn't spent a dime. But I'm pretty much bankrupt, and at the cost of the system, and then they dropped all the charges. So taxpayers in Allegan County are paying for this kind of stuff in their courtroom.
Wow. And so after you ended up calling the police and they kind of flipped this whole situation around on you, I'm talking about the judge's son. So you got taken in, is that correct?
Yes, I was arrested twice over this incident.
And to give a little bit of context, you were describing to me, so right around the time of this incident, you were recovering from some major surgery. What was it? Maybe please explain kind of what your health situation was around that time.
Right when I was thrown in jail, 5 months before that, I had an aortic aneurysm in the center of my heart, and it was going to explode, rupture, they say, and within the next couple of weeks. And so I went to the Mayo Clinic at the urging of my daughter, who was a PA over in a emergency PA over in a hospital in Wisconsin, and she got me at the Mayo Clinic, and they repaired me. I went back home after a few weeks and was back in Michigan, and then all this stuff started coming about. After my surgery, I was told to walk a lot, all the time. I had to walk night and day. My accusers even went into court and said, this man's walking in the middle of the night. There's something wrong with him. And they made it sound like it was a bad deal, a bad thing. I also was accused of carrying a baseball bat. But my accusers kept sicking their dog on me when I would walk past their house. So I never carried a baseball bat, but I did carry a stick because of the police officer. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I have it written down. Told me to carry a stick when I walked past that house. But I was accused of a web of lies, and it was just unbelievable. And that still I'm not allowed on my own property, even though all charges have been dropped.
So it's interesting to me. So their story was like literally disproven by this video evidence that you have that shows you clearly swerving out of the way to avoid hitting this child. Yet the personal protection order remains. Have you ever gotten any explanation for why that's still allowed to be a thing, even though again, this basically de facto restricts you from getting access to your own property?
I've got no explanation why the PPOs are still in place, and I don't have any more money to fight this situation in the courts. And I believe that's what my accuser's whole intent was, to make sure I had no more money and possibly to lose my land. I would like to know from Judge Baker why this PPO still exists, even though all the evidence was tainted, and she seen so in her courtroom that it was tainted, and she still let the PPO stand.
So I want to go back a little bit. So you ended up going to jail. How were you treated, and how long were you in there?
I was arrested because I was following a court order. I have to maintain my lake frontage down there at the lake, and if I didn't maintain that lake frontage, I would be violating Judge Beach's court order. But if I went down there to mow my lake frontage, then I'm violating Judge Baker's court order.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I went down there and maintained my property as Judge Beach's court order stated. I was thrown in jail because of that. And when I was in jail, I was suffering from a lot of pain because I was in a cell with no chair, no bed. And again, this was right after major open heart surgery. I was on the heart-lung machine during that surgery, and while I was in jail, sitting on the concrete floor, trying to get myself up and down a few times, I ripped open some stitches in my chest, and the pain was horrible, to say the least. I called the guards and pushed the button for medical attention, many, many times. I can't even remember how many times, until I passed out in the cell. And then last I recall, I was being hauled off by ambulance in a gurney to emergency. And after my 36-hour stint in the jail, in the emergency room, they said I was in critical care. So that's how Allegan County treats you when you need medical attention.
Wow. And if they had responded in a more expeditious manner, because you said like you were pushing this emergency button and they basically ignored you, is that correct?
Yeah, the guard told me, I don't care what you're ODing on, I don't care what your problem is, you can lay there and die, we're not going to get you help.
Oof, man.
I don't have his name, but I remember his face.
Mm-hmm. So painting the picture for the folks at home, what we essentially have here is, so you have this man that you sold this property to, who happens to have connections to a local judge, and end up going through this exhausting, emotionally and financially legal process that eventually gets overturned just out of the absurdity of it, the fact that the direct physical evidence disproves their narrative, yet there's still this PPO that affects your access to land, which, given the fact that you revoked this gentleman's lake license for very legitimate reasons, would you say it was retaliatory? And on top of that too, like what were some of the other things that this gentleman was doing to you in the interim before he got this PPO out on you?
Well, it was definitely retaliatory. He's called the police on me before for just walking by, like I said, and he was also dumped truckloads of broken blocks on my property and my access to my lake property. And I would call the police, he would get done talking to them, and there would be no police report. Nothing would be done. He's also accused me of throwing stones at him, and I can't hardly use my arms because of, number one, the huge incisions in my chest, but number two, I have a bone disease in both shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man. So I mean, it's really sad and disappointing to hear how. I mean, it sounds like you're getting like bullied out of your own land. Would you say it's what it used to be, like a family farm? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
The road that I built is named after my daughters, my two daughters, Ashley Fawn and Amber Brook. The road is named Fawn Brook.
Mm-hmm. And so you have this man who has connections to this judge in Allegan. So out of curiosity, have you appealed to? Have you tried talking to any of these other judges or law enforcement in Allegan? Is there a sense that is there anybody who's been willing to help you out with the situation?
Well, there's nobody willing to help me out because I have no more money. I'm afraid to go back into Allegan County because they have police officers that will definitely falsify a police report. So I'm in a different county and try to stay out of Allegan altogether now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man. Again, we hear stories about this, a lot, and it's. Well, we talk a lot about things on a national, international scale. It's very important to understand that these kind of abuses happen right here in our own backyard. And so what is your sense, this man's relationship to the judge, he's the father. Is this something that you see a lot out of Allegan, where do you see any of these judges willing to step up and do what's right, or is it kind of like an old boys club, something like that?
Well, we do have a couple of honorable judges there that did see through this scheme. Judge Cronin and Judge Scalasius. Forgive me for mispronouncing your name, but you're an honorable judge. But they are a tight-knit little community, and when they get each other elected, let's face it, they are friends with one another, and they have parties with one another after they get election. And I've heard this from many other people that they just hang out together. They're from the small. It's down on the Kalamazoo River, but it's a small community. Lake Allegan, they call it now, but it's the upcoming community in the Allegan area.
So I want to mention briefly too. So I met Robert through kind of an unconventional channel. Sometimes I will get tips about situations like this, but you were actually at the March for Our Lives, and can you explain, like, you're basically holding signs, and what was your motivation for coming down to the march, and kind of what were you hoping to accomplish?
Well, I'd like people in Allegan County to understand where their taxpayers' money is going to. I was trying to get the attention of any news broadcasters that were watching, and try to get my signs in front of their cameras, but I guess that didn't work. But I am very thankful for Andy and his efforts to shine a light on the truth of my situation in Allegan.
And have you attempted to reach out to any local media, and what's been the response and or lack of response?
Well, I called all of Channel 3 and Channel 8 and 17 and left messages, but I am a senior citizen that's disabled, and I don't have a smartphone nor access to a computer, and because of those things, I was not able to make connection with any of the media stations.
So is that, would you say, is that your ultimate goal right now, is getting some media attention on it? What ultimately would you like to see happen out of this?
I would like more exposure. So more people will be talking about what's going on down there. And then I would like ultimately for Attorney General Bill Schuette to take a look at this manipulation of the courts, because it wasn't just one courtroom this man tried to manipulate. He tried to manipulate 3 courtrooms, and 2 judges could see through the stuff, and one I guess bit it hook, line, and sinker.
Well, again, Robert, I'm really sorry that you're having to deal with this, and just to give people a sense, so you went from owning this property up in Allegan, and you say that you've kind of, this has really tapped out your financial resources. Like, where do you find yourself right now?
Well, I'm homeless, and I've got some friends that are allowing me to stay in a camper on their property behind their farm barn there on their farm, and I am just hoping that we can get this resolved, and I would like to have some legal help on this if I could, to go forward on a personal injury case or a defamation case for sure. If I can find any attorneys at Cooley Law that are willing to take a look at anything, or any attorney at that matter, but I have all the evidence to prove everything I said.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Robert. I guess, is there anything else that you wanted to add while we have you here on the show?
I believe I covered it all. And maybe if I miss something, we'll pick it up on the next broadcast.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Robert. I am sorry that you're dealing with this BS up in Allegan. Of course, that's the tagline on the show, calling out the BS. I also want to thank George Franklin for coming on the show today. A lot of interesting answers. again, big props to Luke and Lawrence. We always hold it down every week and have such great discussions. Luke, I was curious, anything you wanted to add to the discussion there? Or?
Only that if Bill Schuette was actually really serious about running for the governorship, that this case should probably be a little higher on his radar. Mm-hmm. Probably lock down some votes from the good people of Allegan County who want to see the government corruption eliminated from their local government.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think that's something that should transcend any kind of partisan lines. There is, people want, people want a defense against this kind of cronyism that happens. It doesn't just happen on Wall Street, doesn't just happen on Capitol Hill. It happens in our own communities too. That's right. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and close out the show. I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, it's every week from 5 to 7. We upload our shows on YouTube after the fact. Just look it up, the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. We also have a Facebook page if you want to keep track of us that way. And a quick little announcement. We are going to be looking to expand in the near future beyond just a weekly radio broadcast. So if you are, if this kind of journalism, this kind of political discussion is something you are interested in, please get a hold of us. You can get a hold of us on our Facebook page, or you can email us directly at hoodratstrategist@gmail.com. And again, we'll have more specific information about that as it comes along. And please join us. We've got a couple more candidate interviews coming up over the next couple weeks before final exams. So, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, and keep on fighting for that revolution solution.